Hello, bonsoir, everyone. Thank you for joining this new tasting. It's still, unfortunately, all virtual, but at least we get to see each other a little bit and talk to each other. The year has been a good one for Good Hope. We had quite a few tastings. We're finishing in style with Eben and the Sadie family wines. I'm just going to give you just a quick thing for everyone. So this is being recorded. We can edit bits out if you don't want to be recorded. In terms of logistics, most of you have received the kit, 6 little bottles. Unfortunately, too little, but it's at least that. For information, we'll actually be tasting the reds before the whites. So that is something that Eben is very, I would say, adamant about. So, and I think he's right. And voila. So it's my pleasure to welcome all of you and to welcome Eben to this tasting. A few things on presenting a little bit as we do, and it's always good to start with the geography. The sense of place is important for Eben and for all of us in the wine loving community. So we are, as you know, in the Western Cape. That's where the wine landscape is in South Africa. And specifically, we're going to talk a lot about the Swartland. So the Swartland is this pinkish area that you see. And it's actually, I believe, almost the largest, maybe not the largest, but it's quite large in terms of square kilometers by size. So it's one of the largest, if not the largest, appellation, so to speak. So it's also helpful to understand how things are happening. So this is a satellite view of the Swartland. So the Swartland is more or less this patch that you see here. You have Cape Town in the south, and this is the Swartland, and this is the northern limit of the Swartland. A couple of important things. So you're going to hear probably a few times Eben mentioned the West Coast. The West Coast refers to this Atlantic coast, and it's on the west side of South Africa, so West Coast, there we go. It's a beautiful place, the West Coast. The Swartland is a beautiful place. And to make things a little bit even simpler, the Swartland has 3 main mountains that you can see, those little spots here. So this is the Pofadder, where Eben lives and farms, and where mostly farms, but we'll come to that. There are other vineyards that he works with. So that's where the domain is. That's where his house is. Not far from there, and you have the Kastilberg next to this town of Riebeek Kasteel. That's the other mountain. The Pofadder is famous for its granite soils. The Kastilberg is famous for its schist soils. And then you have, on the northern side of the Swartland, you have the Piketberg. We will come to that as well, but that's kind of like a natural border before moving to Olifants River area, which is a bit further north. And obviously, Eben being quite the surfer, you can spot him sometimes. That's actually a real picture of him surfing the waves on some of the very nice beaches south of Cape Town. So with that in mind, I'm also very honored today to have 2 masters of wine on this tasting with us, Jeremy Kuckerman and Mark Piggott. They happen to be together in the same room, so I wanted them to give you a quick introduction, a little bit of a forward to the tasting. Jeremy has written a very good book called Vigneron Essentiel, with a fantastic chapter about Eben. If you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. So Jeremy, Mark, the floor is yours for a quick introduction.
Thanks, Rafi. Eben, did you manage to read the book even though it's in French?
I read my own entry in French, but then I stopped there. You know, because I'm very egocentric. So
yeah, I understand that.
But you will be very proud to know that I decided, yes, I studied French a little bit with Alliance Française many years ago, but I at the time I had to stop because I had to study Spanish because of my story in Spain. So, but I decided actually 2 weeks ago to start to study French again. So I will finish it.
Good.
And then I will read your book.
Good. Well, difficult to speak about Eben in a few sentences because there's so many things to say, and that's probably one of my longest chapter, I think, in the book, by the way. But yeah, I think what Eben has done in 21 years, roughly, since you settled in your own farm is pretty amazing. He's been instrumental in putting Swartland and South Africa on the wine map. That's for sure. He's what I would call a natural leader. Not because he wants to lead anything, simply because he's like that, and because he thinks it's important. He started in a very small farm, and with that many tools, or without anything basically, and the wine were already speaking loudly, I think. And most important, he's very collective. He worked with the others. He helped everyone in the region because he wants Swartland to shine and South Africa to shine, and that's why I think he's a very special person. And I've been very honored to come to the farm and to meet him and to share a few wines, and I hope we will share a lot more wines together even. And it was really an honor to tell your story and to tell the story of all the Swartland producers, because I think there's something very special going on in the region.
Thank you very much.
Mark, you want to say a word maybe about your experience with South African and Eben wine?
So, I mean, I can't, because I don't know Eben in the way that Jeremy does, so I won't speak specifically to that. But I think the easiest thing to say is that the reality of what is in my cellar, and the reality is that the three countries that dominate my cellar are France, Italy, and South Africa. And that's because even though I do more work for Australia and Barossa in South Australia in particular, the reality is that my favorite wines outside of France and Italy come from South Africa. And there is a particularity and a specificity about the quality and I think the precision of some of those varieties that are represented in South Africa. Obviously, some of them, or many of them, being what we would consider traditional either French or Spanish varieties, but that they've almost become the kind of true home of those varieties. So, for example, like Chenin. If you said to me I could only drink Chenin from one country in the world, it would no doubt be South Africa. And I really like the Loire. I used to import wines from the Loire, but I no doubt I would choose South Africa. And I think that probably my favorite red variety in the world is Syrah. And again, I think that South African Syrah, or the best of South African Syrah, is truly, truly fine, world-beating fine wine. And then lastly, I remember when I've only been to South Africa 3 times, but the last time I was there, I haven't been for a while, since 2015, I think. And I remember at the time thinking, why aren't more people drinking Sanso? Because Sanso in South Africa is such a marvelous thing. And what I've been really pleased to see over the last sort of 5 or 6 years is not only the rise of South African Sanso across multiple regions, but particularly from Swartland, but also that I think that the French have begun to take Sanso a little bit more seriously in their own vineyards as well. And that is a result of the success of South African Sanso, I think. So not only is it a case of South Africa doing something that maybe some people feel is like copying, France because it has many French or Spanish varieties, but it's actually leading the way with some of those varieties as well. And I think it's just a fantastic country to explore. from a Venus perspective, never mind a touristic one as well.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you so much. So just a little bit of logistics as you have the wines. There are 6 wines. We will start with the reds. The order is the following actually. So we will start with Pofadder, which is the Cinsault. It comes from vintage 2015. So we try to keep the vintage 2015 across the board on this tasting for the single vineyards. And then it will be Treinspoor, which is the Tinta Barocca, 2015 as well. And we will finish the reds thanks to Remy in Bordeaux from Valade and Transandine. The idea on this tasting is that we share older vintages so that people have something interesting to taste. And in the case of Eben's wine, it's always good to wait a little bit. So we will have a Columella 2010, which is a remarkable vintage, and it's also a turning point in the Columella style, and Eben will go into that. And when we'll start the whites, we will start with Skurfberg, which is the Chenin. We'll then move to Kokerboom, which is the Semillon, and we'll finish with Palladius. So Kokerboom and Skurfberg are 2015 again for the single vineyards, and Palladius is 2013, an interesting vintage, and again, corresponding pretty much to I would say, a transition in the Palladius making. Okay, so one thing that we're going to do also to try to make it visual, there's going to be some videos, and Eben is going to talk a little bit about whatever you want, Eben, but also you can comment the videos. We'll talk a little bit just before tasting properly, but you can start tasting on your own. But I think it's important that we talk about viticulture and agriculture in general. It's important for you, Eben, and then we'll move to going through the bottles themselves. If you have any questions, there's a chat room. If there's any word in English or in Afrikaans that you're not understanding, feel free to ask. We'll translate. And then at a few moments, we'll take more questions, but at any time, feel free to jump in if you have any specific question. Okay, so hold on a second. So just coming through. So Eben, this is a video of your farm. If you want to a little bit explain the farm, the story a little bit, and how it all started for you.
So I did not come from a family of wine. My existence in wine is primarily from my love of agriculture. I studied agronomy first, and my only intention was to become a farmer. I love the soil, I love the earth, and I love plants. And I love all plants. It's not just the vine. I love all plants. And I started studying. In South Africa, I first had to do my military service, so I finished that. I was a very young man, but then after my military, I started to study agronomy. And while I was studying agriculture, I studied in Stellenbosch, which is an area which is very famous for its wine. So I was exposed to a lot of wine and people in wine. And that kind of got my imagination going. And then in my studies, I started to read more about the plant, you know, this vine, this plant, mostly Vitis vinifera, but you have obviously all the species, Labrusca, all the wild species of the world. But the plant started to fascinate me, and I decided in the end, I thought for a long time I was going to farm tomatoes in Mount Vesuvio in southern Italy. That was my plan. But that didn't happen. So then I started farming with this plant, the vine that I loved dearly. And the first time I took the grapes to the local cooperativa, or the the big winery, the syndicate, I couldn't believe that they put the beautiful grapes that I produced with the average grapes from other growers. It killed me. And I said I would never farm so hard in my life for that result because it makes no sense. And then I went back to study. Then I said, no, this is not going to work for me. I will make the wine. This is not working. And then I went back to study enology and finished that. And I started working in South Africa, but I realized that I had to kind of build my education. So I started working in Germany. I worked in Austria. I worked in Italy. Worked a little bit in the south of France. I worked in Oregon. I worked in California. I worked in Spain. Ended up actually staying for 10 years in Spain, purely because I love that Mediterranean part of Europe very much. And Spanish is it's a great bunch of people. But, you know, but at the same time, I'm a South African. My family came here in 1735. So we have been here for a long time. I don't feel like I belong to Europe. And I belong here. And I started to think about making a wine in Africa. And first I started working for other people. I worked for 2 companies, but both companies was trying to cut corners. And I cannot cut corners. My brain is not wired like that. I'm very black and white. It's right, it's wrong, it's the absolute result, or it's a miss. And after these 2 encounters, I said, I'm going on my own. So in 2000, I went on my own. I started a small domain. In the beginning, I was only making 8,000 bottles from 3 hectares. At that time, I was farming the 3 hectares myself, pruning everything, suckering everything, doing everything. The only thing I didn't do myself was I didn't pick it all myself. But all the other work I make myself. So I was really working day and night on these 3 hectares. And out of that 3 hectares, I created the Columella. And that was in 1999 I started, 2000 the first wine, 2002 the second wine. And then 2 years later, you know, I was driving past all these amazing old white wine vineyards, and then I decided to create the Palladius. For me, wine is a produce of the earth, and because I love agriculture, I think for me, wine is a cultural extension. So agriculture is a culture in the land. The problem today in the world is that you don't have agriculture. We have agribusiness. So everybody looks at the earth as a business plan. So people try and make business out of the land. So when you have agribusiness and you have the absence of agriculture, when you don't have culture, you have nothing. Because in the end, if you turn the earth into business, we will end up killing the earth because we will ruin it. And I started a very big drive to get back to agriculture, the full cultural circle in agriculture. So I studied biodynamie, I studied organics, I do regenerative farming, all those things. And in the last years, I've been transforming the domain and the hectares all into really amazing agronomical, cultural environments. So today the domain is 32 hectares. It's very big, to my mind, too big maybe. But I have 32 hectares. We make 25 hectoliter per hectare. So we make around 75,000 bottles in a good year. half of the domain is white, half of the domain is red. And yeah, we also winemaking. I started producing the first natural wine in South Africa in 1998. So it's maybe in France you have people like Martial Lapierre or the guys in Beaujolais, or you have very many proponents, you know, Nicolas Joly and this and that, that's been farming, doing natural winemaking and farming for a long time. But in South Africa, it's still relatively young. You know,
Correct, yeah.
I'm kind of one of the oldest guys here, and I'm only really I'm making wine naturally for 20 years, and I'm farming organic, full organic, the way it must be for 8 years. So everything is very new here. But the beautiful thing about the place is, like you say, the Swartland is very big. We have vineyards from 20 meters above sea level to 800 meters. We have calcaire, you know, limestone soils. We have granite. We have schist. We have the soils like you have in Bulgaria, in Tuscany, the terra rossas, you know, these like you have in the Barossa Valley, you know, this very rich plinite derivative iron oxide, red clay soils. We have a alluvial plain, which is a delta, which is like Grave in Bordeaux. And we have, so we have really very good soil here for wine, and we have a Mediterranean climate. So it's a really good place to make wine if you can be mature about growing the vineyards right. I don't irrigate the vineyards. I do everything the old way. Nothing really special, but just doing everything the way I think it should be to be sustainable, regenerative, and in the end have the best result for the environment and have an expression of the terroir. So the domain is, it's a very small domain really for South Africa. You know, 30 hectares in South Africa is really small.
Yeah, and I'm just showing here another video. You do a lot of driving. The Swartland is quite big. You go to all different places. I think, how far is the furthest from the farm? Is it when you have to go to Clanwilliam, I guess, or?
So my furthest vineyard from me is 4 hours.
Yeah, 4 hours just to get there.
Just to get there. And so today we have 54 parcels over 350 kilometers. So I have a huge logistics with tractors, trucks, you know, a lot of things to make all these areas. We don't buy grapes. We farm all the hectares ourselves. The land that we don't own, we farm in fermage.
Yeah. And I think also what I wanted to tell the people is you have a lot of, it's not just you, people, obviously you're the leader of a quite large team. I think you have now, how many? I think 14 full-time or a little bit more, 14, 15 people.
We are 14 in management, but we are 38.
38. And Paul, I wanted to mention Paul because these days, Paul is basically the one in the cellar, and you spend most of your time in the vineyard, correct?
Yeah. So I was working in the cellar with the wine, with the production and the vinification. I was doing vinification from 2000 till 2019. And then in 2019, I said, I want to only work in the vineyards because my first love, I love the plant still today more than anything. So I kind of retired myself in 2019 to go and only work in the vineyards. And I'm now in the vineyards only. And Paul took over the winemaking in 2019. He joined me in 2013. So almost in his 6th, 7th year, I gave him the keys to the cave. Now it's his time now. My time is the time in the vineyards and truly unlocking the terroir.
Yeah. And to me, it feels like you've never been happier than now, spending all this time in the vineyard. And even
it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Yeah. You know, I always say some people in the morning wake up because their iPhone wakes them up. I wake my phone up. I get up at 4:45 every day of my life by myself. I don't need an alarm. I don't need a thing to say, hey, guy, wake up. 4:45, my eyes do this.
That's
Maybe
good.
if I drink a lot of wine, I can be till 6. But normally in the week, if I don't drink too much wine, 4:45, my eyes go. And then I go, I leave. I have a tea and I leave the house at 5:10 every day of my life.
Wow.
I leave the house.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I love it. I love it. I really do.
And
for me now it's dark here, and it's kind of, I have to wait now for tomorrow, you know?
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic place. So just for information, also, I think it's the first time this has happened. But last week was the local guide Platter picks every year the best winery, and this year I think it was the first time all of your wines got a 5-star from Platter. I'm not a big fan of awards and scores, but I think it shows. For me, this time that you have spent in the recent years focusing more and more on the vineyard itself is really paying off, and the wines have reached a level which people thought that wouldn't be possible. And I think it shows that by working the land and doing every year, you know, things, as you said, without any compromise, drives the quality and at the end of the day, the happiness of the people and their empowerment.
No, it's for me very important. No, we have 38 people here, and
and you work a lot with a lot of farmers, right? And growers.
Yeah, these are all the guys of the different domains that we work with, you know. So I work with a lot of people, you know. In total, I think so. We have a domain that makes 75,000 bottles, but in total is working on the project, all these people you see, plus my 38 guys. So I think we are over 70 people working on the 70,000 bottles. You can never do that in France.
No, you can't. That's the beauty of South Africa. And also...
Yeah, because this place is still, things are simple here. Things are still country. We have cows next to our vineyards and sheep, and you know, it's still we are still farmers.
Yeah, no, it's true.
It's not a desert of only vineyards. Some regions in France I go, very famous places, and for me it's like a desert. It's all green vineyards, but it's a desert of vineyards. Everything is just one vine after the other. For me, this is not good. You must have a tree, and you need a place for a cow, and then you need a vineyard, and then you can't just have one plant to the next 25,000 hectares together. It's not good.
No, it's not good. And also, you mentioned it just before the call started. I think what is also amazing in South Africa in general, and specifically in the Swartland, is how all the producers and the vignerons got together to work together to help each other. And that has also propelled the Swartland, not only, you know, just by people knowing about it, but also I think it has amazingly helped each other to do things even better, to emulate each other.
I know the camaraderie is very big, and it's beautiful. You have to work at it. It does not come natural. You must make time.
No, exactly.
You must make time.
So this is a picture taken during the day, but for those who have been there, there are usually what you call Swartland breakfast meetings at pretty early hours of the day.
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, yeah. So that's
5 o'clock in the morning, we have a barbecue once a month.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Best team meeting ever.
Yeah.
So you mentioned farming practices and regenerative farming. People are seeing now a video of how you work with cover crops and mulch. That has been a big thing, right?
Yeah. So when the problem with global warming is the solar radiation is going crazy, and I did very many models. You know, we built these solar radiation models that show the solar radiation on the ground. And I started to work a lot with mulch and straw, and you know, we throw a lot of mulching on the vines, and we plant a lot of cover crops because we really need to create an environment to protect the soil moisture. We need to keep the solar radiation of the ground. We need to keep the wind, because the evapotranspiration from the vineyards is very, very big. So a lot of the regenerative farming is about these cover crops, rolling them flat, creating like carpets. We try never to have the earth bare, like open. Always have a cover. But because we don't irrigate, we cannot have green growing things in our growing season. So we roll it in spring and try to just, with that rolling action, we have blades on the rollers. We just cuts it in pieces, but we kind of roll these very big cover crop strips, and then all the mulch packed in the rows where the vines are. And that's all to keep the moisture and because in the end, if you have enough moisture, the translocation systems in your plant is better, which means the plant will break down less of your acids to get ATP molecules at the end of ripening. And the big question in the world now is, even for Burgundy, I mean, I don't mind paying 400 euros for a bottle of wine. It's expensive, but it's not the end of the world. But I don't want to pay 400 euros for Chambol Musigny that's 15 alcohol. This is not fun. Yeah. This is low fun, you know. So for us also, I need to find ways. So we have a policy in our winery: we never bottle wine over 14. It's a rule.
It's a dogma. Nothing above 14.
If you can say, I have one thing that I'm very dogmatic about, because that's one of the problems with biodynamism. You become too dogmatic. Yeah. It's just my opinion, because I work with a lot of biodynamists, and for me sometimes there's an absence of a curiosity to go beyond the status quo. And you know, Rudolf Steiner was a very clever man, but since 1912 or whatever, there's been a lot of other very smart people on the planet. He's not the last clever guy to live. There's a lot of clever people. There's a lot of clever people living today that you can actually speak to. So for me, dogma is not good. But for me, the 14 line is, I often speak to Adi Barnost about it, because in the world of wine, they often talk about physiological ripeness, right? You hear this word. Yeah. It's kind of this loose term that's getting thrown around. For me, physiological ripeness don't exist. As an artist say, you only have psychological ripeness. You know, if you pick the wine at 15 alcohol, I think psychologically you are expecting to make a wine that's very open, very soft tannin, very explosive, very self-explanatory, very easy to drink on a release. Okay, it's ripe. If you pick that same vineyard at 13.5 alcohol, the wine is more steer, it needs more time in aging, needs more time in the bottle, but the one guy is making a wine to be drunk in 2 years, and the other guy is maybe making a wine to be drunk in 30 years. And I want to be the second guy. You know, for me, it's okay when we release the wines, that the wines are not always showing perfect. For me, it's important, what are the wine going to look like when the guy opens the bottle of wine? 15 years down the line, the wine must still be fresh, acidity, the wine must still sit up straight. The wine at 30 years must still have a posture, must not be falling apart, mustn't look like a patient on a kidney machine. You know, the wine must be together. So for us, if we pick over 14 alcohol, it's too ripe. It's a fact. So now I can either pick green grapes, or I must find ways to get the vineyards to be ripe at 14. And by packing big mulches, big cover crops, keeping the solar radiation off the ground, keeping the evapotranspiration of the ground, the aspect, planting slopes that are south, using soils with slightly higher clay water retention capacity that can release moisture later in the season, planting the right varieties. So in the world of vineyards, vines, you have two types of vines. You have isohydric and anisohydric. Isohydric plants are plants that when the evapotranspiration exceeds a certain ratio, the plant shuts down. An example of a very good isohydric grape is Grenache Noir. Okay? Another example of a very good isohydric grape, Assertico.
Correct.
And isohydric grapes are, for me, the grapes, they're a little bit dumber. They're not so intelligent. They keep evapotranspirating at full speed all the time, and they exhaust their moisture. They burn out of their cycles. It's like a car where the rev counter is always in the red. A good example of this grape variety is Merlot.
Merlot, yeah.
Sauvignon Blanc. Okay. So when in the last 20 years, I was part of a big program. Nobody was interested in this program. And I, in the end, decided to go on my own. And I put in the program on my own 800,000 euros. And the program was only to bring the best Massal selections of isohydric grapes of the world to South Africa. So what did I bring to South Africa? I brought Agriugitico. I brought Zino Mavro. I brought Assertico, Grillo, Catarato, Fiano. I brought Bastardo de Castillo, Le Donner Pelout, Trincadera, Tinta Francesa. I can't even remember all the... So I planted all these grapes, not because I want to make schizophrenia with wine. The point is to plant varieties that can respond to global warming. And I have grapes, you know, Cinsault Blanc, for example. Cinsault Blanc, Claret Blanche, Verdelho. We pick in this area full ripe. I'm talking ripe. Yellow bunches, ripe stalks, everything. 12 alcohol.
Amazing.
But in the same time, if I pick ripe Vineyard, I have 17 alcohol.
17, yeah.
So I pull out the Vineyard. I have still a little bit because I like the plant. I like the story. So I kept 4 rows. I have 4 rows of Vineyard. But I don't need more than 4 rows of Vineyard in my life. I need a lot of rows of Chenin Blanc, a lot of rows of Grillo, Catarato, Fiano, Cinsault Blanc, Semillon Blanc, Semillon Gris, Palomino, Claret. These are the grapes that I think. So when you ask me how you make the maturity, you must first plant the right grape. You know, the scary question is what will happen in Burgundy if Pinot Noir is not the right grape anymore?
Yeah.
It's a hard question.
Yeah, you don't want to ask that to someone in Burgundy.
But if you don't ask the question and you wait 60 years and you are wrong, you have a bigger problem.
Indeed. Yeah, yeah.
For Burgundy, it will be better now to plant some other grapes in Burgundy now. I don't say they must make commercial wine. They must plant somewhere 12 hectares, 20 hectares of interesting varieties, make it in Burgundy in different microclima or clima or lieu-dit or whatever, and find, and in 20 years, if nothing is wrong with Pinot Noir, you didn't lose anything. But in 20 or 40 years, if the Pinot Noir is not the perfect grape, and you only then want to get the answers, you have a bigger problem.
Yeah.
And that's that's how I view our own domain. And that is why I took 800,000 euros. It's not a lot of euros, but in South Africa, it's a lot of rands. To start a small project on the side, just for all this research. Very important.
Indeed. And we'll show some pictures after the tastings of some of these new plantings that you have done. So just as you know, most of you know on this tasting, there's really two types of wine in terms of branding that you produce. So the old series or the single vineyard, and then the other ones are, I would say, the signature wines. So it's the rule is pretty simple, right? The single vineyards are single vineyards, and whereas the Palladius and Columella, which are the signature wines, are the ones that represent, I would say, the whole region. Is that how you see it?
100%. So we bottle 8 monopoles, which are from very old vineyards. And then we bottle 2 wines that I view as appellation wines. And an appellation wine so in France, you have a long story with appellation and appellation contrôlée. So we cannot teach the French anything about appellation, but my view is a little bit different. If you want to make a wine that represents the appellation, you must have all the grapes of the appellation in the wine. So, for example, if I want to make an appellation wine of white wine in the Swartland, and I don't like Vineyard, so I pull out my last 4 rows, and I don't put the Vineyard in, then my wine is not an appellation wine because I, on a personal level, excluded a reality of the appellation.
Yeah.
When you make in Columella and Palladius, there are even grapes that I don't like.
But you put them there because they're part of the story.
Because the principle must be right.
Correct.
So obviously I don't put in 60%. I put maybe 3 or 5% in. But you must have it in the wine. Otherwise, it's not an appellation wine, it's an elitist wine.
Yeah. Some of these single vineyards are obviously amazing sites. We're seeing right now, I think it's the Skurfberg, the Skurfberg vineyard. Quite a crazy place. I think once you said if Mad Max had a vineyard, this would be it.
Yeah, no, the vineyard is mad. It's crazy. It should not even exist. It's a little bit the area is a little bit like Colares in Portugal.
In Portugal, yeah.
If you see Colares and Colares with the Vical and the Remishko and these things, it's kind of a Colares.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then another amazing vineyard and wine, which we'll unfortunately not taste tonight, but is Mefkirsten, the oldest Chenin vineyard in South Africa. That's another beautiful place.
Yeah, it's planted in the middle of a town, so it's our only urban vineyard. All our other vineyards is in the arse end of the world, in the Bout du Monde, you know.
Bout du Monde.
Yeah, exactly. But this one is in the middle of Stellenbosch, in the town. Yeah. It's an urban vineyard.
And Mefkirsten, for those of you who are wondering, is basically Lady Kirsten. She was Madame Kirsten, and she passed away now, but she had been the lady you dealt with when taking over the farming, right?
Yeah, she looked after the vineyard for 68 years. Yeah,
68 years. It's an amazing place. Amazing place. An amazing.
You can see here the cover crops.
Yeah,
cover crops, the mulch. There is no sun on the ground here.
No, indeed. It's an amazing place.
You can see clearly in this picture, all the mulch, all the,
Yeah. And then the signature wines, we'll talk about them in details, but as you said, they represent the region, Columella for reds, Palladius for whites. And as you're doing new plantings, the Columella and Palladius 20 years from now might have a complete different blend into it than what it is today, but we'll mention that. So I think, sorry if it has taken this long, but I think it's very important to understand before we start tasting, going through the samples. But I think it's important to understand how important agriculture is to you. I think it's almost a prerequisite to understand when tasting the work that you and your team have put behind this and the philosophy behind it.
No, it's everything, you know. There is no, the plant cannot lie. It cannot. True. It's not like us. We even lie to ourselves.
Sometimes.
The plant cannot lie. I love it about the plant. It's always honest. And it will reflect your entire effort every time.
Rafi, can we ask a question?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Hello. Good evening, Eben. Just a question about Chenin Blanc, because you mentioned all these varieties that you went to prospect in different countries, and they mainly come from very warm climates. Can you do you have an idea why Chenin Blanc, and through maybe the selection process in the 18th or 19th century that led to Chenin Blanc having this large plasticity of being adapted to such a warm and Mediterranean climate, coming from the Loire Valley, obviously, where it's a cool climate variety?
Yeah, that's a PhD question. It's a question that's worth $1 billion. But I will try to understand what I understand, but to answer you, nobody really knows. Because Chenin should not work here on paper.
Yeah, on paper.
So on paper, it should not work. So, and the fact that it's working here doesn't help all of us that's trying to be academical about wine, because it breaks our self-esteem. But what we know of Chenin is that, so the plant, obviously coming from the Loire, looking at Vouvray, looking at Montlouis, looking at Savigny, all these areas, a lot of limestone, a lot of that kind of background. But in South Africa, somehow, Chenin Blanc loves granite. So if Chenin cannot grow in limestone, and it must make a second choice, the best second choice in the world for Chenin is granite. So, and we have a big percentage of granite in South Africa in our soil. So there was I think for starters, we had a very good base terroir for Chenin outside France. The second thing is by 1945, 55% of South Africa was planted only to Chenin Blanc. When you plant more than half of a country to only one grape, even if you are very bad, you're going to plant some of the right sites. Not by design, by sheer mass. So we planted, I think at that stage, 60,000 hectares of Chenin in South Africa. Now it's much less again because they have been replaced with other grapes like Sauvignon Blanc. I don't know why, but okay, things happen. So I think we had such a big national established planting that out of that today we have, say, 3,000 hectares in South Africa. That's really very good. And in that 3,000 hectares, there's 300 hectares that is exceptional. And that's basically how it came about. Then in vines, you've got something that's called epigenetics. And Chenin Blanc was planted here already on the second planting import. So by 1673, the Chenin was already here. So the grape has been kind of doing its adaptability in the country for a very long time. And I think the combination of the vast plantings, the bulk volume of granite soils, and epigenetics in sorts, all of those together, and none being more important than others, all have contributed to the success of South African Chenin.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Something to, yeah, because Semillon was also a very popular variety in the beginning, but we don't see such a large range of adaptability with Semillon.
The thing is, the Semillon is still a very good proponent to the Cape. But what happened is we pulled out the Semillon to plant Chenin. The Chenins of the 40s and the 50s replaced the Semillons of the 1900s to 1925s. So that's where we lost. We lost basically Semillon Blanc and Semillon Gris to Chenin.
We'll come to it when and that's the reason why I picked Skurfberg and Kokerboom, was to talk about this dynamic, the historical dynamic of Chenin and Semillon, and Chenin having replaced somehow Semillon in South Africa. So the first one is the red Cinsault Pofadder, 2015. Pofadder is, if I'm correct, coming from the Kastilberg. Yeah, so not very far from your domain. Cinsault obviously has a long history in South Africa. I think Mark mentioned that at the beginning. We're seeing here typically the old vines you have. How old are they typically in this vineyard?
They're not very old. They are 48 years old. So for us, it's old, but it's not like
100-year-old. Yeah.
It's halfway there. But so when I was living in Priorato, I 1 year after harvest, I went to the Roussillon, and I tasted this guy's wine that was making wine in La Tour de France.
Yeah, La Tour de France.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Cyril Fall, yeah.
Yeah, Clos Rouge Gorge.
Yeah, beautiful wine.
Yeah, maybe I pronounce it wrong, but it's something like that. So
exactly
and then I go to see Cyril, struggle my ass off to find him. First of all, for him to answer his phone. Phone problem, email problem, SMS problem, but I find him in his domain. And I tasted that year in 2005. I tasted a Cinsault from Cyril, from one monopole.
Yeah.
That was arguably one of the best red wines I've drunk in my life. And at the same time, I was doing a study of the history of South Africa. And I don't know if you know, but there was really great wines. I mean, our wines are good right now in South Africa, but there were crazy wines produced in South Africa in between 1964 and 1978 from Cinsault. Then I was drinking these wines. Then I tasted Cyril's wine. And then I said, shit, Cinsault must come back. And in 2009, we bottled the first single vineyard Cinsault in South Africa.
Correct.
That's 2009. Today, there is 60 different single vineyard Cinsauts in South Africa. So it came a big revolution.
Indeed. And that bottling was Pofadder, right?
It was Pofadder. It was this wine.
Yeah. So it's a historical, somehow recent history, but historical bottling.
Yes. The 2009 Pofadder, maybe one of the most important things we ever did. Yeah. You know,
restarting the Cinsault.
Yeah, not everybody know it, but it's not important who started. It's not that. The important is it started.
Exactly.
It's the past. It's now living again. Yeah. So the wine is planted on schist and ripens very late. And normally we bottle, this one is 13.2% alcohol, the 15.
Yeah.
It was quite a warm year. But we had good rain that year, so the ripening was really good because Cinsault have a very good thin skin and can get a lot of sunburn. But in 15, the ripening was really very good. I don't know how the wine tastes because I don't have the same wine in my glass, but you must tell me because I don't know the wine traveling to France, then going in small bottle, then going everywhere. I don't know.
Right.
The people must say, if it's good, it's good. If it's not, okay.
Yeah, guys, feel free to use the chat room to put your comments on how the wines are tasting. But to me, it's tasting quite well. So I'm not a big fan of this mini bottles thing, but I always like to drink it with real people in real bottles. But I think it's showing remarkably well. And Eben, you are quite also tight on when to drink those bottles. So never before 5 years. And,
no, this is a good time. This is a good time.
We're getting close to your famous.
You can start to think to open it. Yeah.
For you, it's never before 8 years, but now we're close enough. We are on 7 years. Yeah. Okay. Now it's a fantastic, and it's true that the Cinsault revolution from South Africa has been quite something. We have some people who are drinking it in Holland, so it even went in small shapes, in small bottles to Holland, and it's still working.
No ways.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, we have a few people from Holland. Poor them, they're in lockdown, but I hope they're having a good evening thanks to this tasting.
Okay. So for us, the Cinsault is very important. So the thing about Cinsault is it has a light color.
Yeah.
But when you look at it, you start to think like Gamay Noir, right? You think Gamay Noir, but Cinsault is not like Gamay Noir. It has a lot more tannin, a lot more.
Yeah.
So the tannin in Cinsault is what makes it crazy. I will show you something if I can. There's a bottle on my desk. Just let me
Yeah, we'll wait for you.
So you see, yeah, find the. You see,
yeah, I remember opening some of those at the Swartland Revolution.
Yeah,
the tinsel
so
from the 70s. Yeah.
Yeah, so from 72, 73, 74, most amazing old wines I ever drank in South Africa are these. The vineyard that is Pofadder is the same vineyard that went into this wine.
Wow.
So it's a kind of a Lazarus kind of story, you know? Where
rise from the dead.
Yes, rise from the dead.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
fantastic. So yeah, Pofadder is quite also a bit. Sometimes for me, it's quite the charmer.
Yeah,
it's of all of them, so to speak.
Yeah, so we pair it with normally with food. We pair it with tuna.
Yeah, that would be a good match with tuna.
So if you cut the tuna in square blocks and you just lightly pan fry it, a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of sesame seeds, because tuna has a lot of texture, right?
Correct.
A lot of that middle mouth tuna, and since I have a lot of texture in the tannins. The aromatics is fresh. Everything is saying I'm like easy, but when you drink it, you can feel a lot of density, and that is very good with the tuna.
We're all getting very hungry now.
Yeah. I'll come to France. We can cook.
Yeah.
I'll just come there.
Yeah, we'll do that. The next one is Treinspoor. So I have to say Treinspoor is not the charmer type. It's maybe even the opposite when it's young, but I find it an amazing wine over time, and it also reflects again the story of Tinta Barocca in the Swartland. It's I can't remember how Tinta Barocca got there, but it's one of the, I would say, landmark grapes of the Swartland historically.
Yeah. So it was the biggest plantings of Tinta Barocca in the world is in the Swartland, not in Portugal.
Oh yeah, it's even bigger than in Portugal. Wow.
Yeah, it's the capital of Tinta Barocca in the world is the Swartland. And it's a fantastic grape. It's a little bit like when you blend the Syrah with a Nebbiolo. You know, you have a lot of tannin, you have a lot of spicy herbal characteristics. The 15 that we bottled, I don't have the wine here in my glass, but I remember the wine went quite austere and a little bit funky at some stage in the bottle, and then some bottles, because we bottled at that stage with a lot of carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
You know, because we did a lot of maceration carbonique on it. But today we destem 1/3. So we don't have that much carbon dioxide on the wine anymore. In 15, we had the highest volume of carbon dioxide, but I think it was on the edge in my mind. So I don't know how it's looking in the bottles, but...
And it's tasting quite remarkably in my glass, at least. It's exactly how you describe it, a mix of a Syrah meeting Piemonte Nebbiolo.
Yeah. Because... Do you know what's the beautiful thing with Tinta Barocca? You can buy a Barolo for the price of a Beaujolais.
Yeah, it's getting expensive to buy Barolos. And Eben is a big fan of Piemonte wines. Huh?
Yeah. I'm busy dying in Barolo with the money. Huh?
Yeah. It's killing us right now.
Huh? It's too much.
Killing us.
I need to find a second job.
But
Tinta Barocca can age like there are no grape that is red at the moment in the Swartland that can age longer than Tinta Barocca.
Yeah.
Still not.
Yeah. Would you say that Treinspoor is probably in the single reds the most age worthy?
100%.
Yeah. It could last quite a while. And this 15 definitely shows it. It still has, it's drinkable. It's very, very nice to have, and it's saying that it can go on for many more years.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a bit, the 15, 16, 17, 17, 18, and 19 of the Treinspoor, you will see is a bit, has more precision in it. Because in the beginning, we used too much Grape entière.
Yeah,
and now we have the right, now we have the right way of doing the vinification. It took us really a long time to work out how to make Tinta Barocca as a monovarietal.
Yeah.
Really very difficult.
Yeah, it's quite
temperamental. It's like Pinot Noir. I mean, it's not like Pinot Noir in elegance, but it's like Pinot Noir in its temperament. It's really difficult in the cellar.
Yeah, indeed. So the third wine to finish with the reds is Columella. So that's the first wine that you made. The first edition one was in 2000. The one you guys, everyone has with you is the 2010 vintage, which is a remarkable vintage across South Africa in general. But for you, it's also a turning point. And I think it's important if you can explain to everyone this approach you have to make a couple of changes every 10 years instead of making changes every day.
Yeah, so when I started with wine, 28 years ago, in the beginning, I was making so many experiments and things, but in the end, you don't know where the wine is coming from. You don't know, is the wine, you are making so many experiments and changes. When you see the wine in the end, when you smell the wine, you look at the wine, you analyze the wine, you don't know, is it from this aspect or that aspect or this aspect or that. So in 2000, I said to myself, I can only make changes once every 10 years and maximum 1 or 2 changes, not more. Otherwise, I will lose the narrative. I will lose the logic. So Columella in the beginning, you all know the early 2000s. It was the years of, dark, opulent, very powerful wines draw the attention of the crowd. It was still in the day of Robert Parker was still tasting. I don't have a problem with Robert Parker at all. At least he was tasting. It's always easy to criticize the other guy, right? But where is your tasting notes?
Exactly.
So I don't criticize the guy because at least he tastes, at least he published, at least he gives some books. So I'm not a Parker basher,
No, you're not.
Maybe I like different wines from him, but that's personal. That's got nothing to do with him not being able to taste. So, but at that time, definitely bigger wines was the attraction. And at that time, we did 3 pigeages a day. We picked between 13.5 and 14.5 alcohol. And the pigeages, and we destemmed all the grapes.
Yeah.
That was from 2000 till 2009. In 2009, I finished the first 10 years of Columella. The world started to change. I started to pick up on this thing of elegant wines, freshness, purity of fruit, transparency. I start to listen to what people, the words of people. And I'm like, okay, these are now the qualities that people say is great wine: transparency, elegance, purity of fruit, freshness, red, bright fruit. Columella is black, dark, opulent, opaque, olives, dark chocolate, cassis. So obviously,
something had to change.
Something have to change. Is that, first of all, is the Columella that I make the Swartland wine? Or is this even trying to impress Robert Parker? What is the story? So then in 2009, I said, okay, now we do something completely different. We stop the pigeage. No more pigeage. We do 30%, we do 50% Grape entier, and we stop the pigeage. And we do one remontage a day, but only 10% of the volume, a very small one, almost nothing. And so we change from making the wine. For me, it's either you make the wine like you make coffee, or you make the wine like you are making tea. So making coffee, fast, short, warm, heavy extraction. Tea, cooler, longer fusion. And I started to work with the concept of the fusion of the grapes. And I start to read about the teas of China, the teas of Ceylon. I start to read about tea. I start drinking tea. Start drinking all the teas of the world. Start to think. And I think the 2010 was the first one. And then when I changed the wine in 10, I realized I cannot put the wine in the barrique anymore all the time. So the wine is now 12 months in barrique, but not new. 8% new, something there, 8%. Just to make sure the barrique is in some, but 8% means every 10 years you change. So we do 12 months in barrique and 12 months we do in big foudre. A little bit more like what you will do like a Brunello de Montalcino, this kind of way. I wish I can keep it 3 years in the foudre, but maybe one day, huh?
Yeah, and indeed, and we're seeing some videos now, but you moved to a complete set of I would say containers for the wine with 2010. No more the little, So what we're seeing right now, that was before 2010. It was mostly small barrels, right?
Yeah, I still have it in the small barrels, but only 10% new, but for 12 months. And then 12 months, it's only in foudre.
Yeah. No,
we are moving away from the wood completely. Most of the foudres we have is, my oldest tanks are, they were 15 years old when I bought them. So my oldest tanks are now 37 years old, something like that. The oldest foudres, 37 years. And my youngest foudres are 4 years old. So I have from 4 years till 37 years foudre, and the rest is all concrete. And
there's a question on where your foudres are coming from, and the wood.
I buy the foudres from Stockinger.
Stockinger
in Austria.
Yeah, the Austrian provider.
And the barriques is all from Treinspoor. I use the T5, the Treinspoor Sank.
Indeed. So this wine is amazing. And again, thank you a lot, Remy, for sharing this bottle from your cellar into small pieces, sampled to all of you across Europe. But it's an amazing. It has an amazing nose. I wish I could have stayed on that before drinking it. And it's this change in style is very apparent if you compare it with the
can I say
yeah,
something?
go ahead.
Because I mean, when I came to Swartland, we talked about that, and Eben said he changed a lot of things in 2010 and etc. Yet I had the chance to taste the wine that he was producing before 2010, and even though they were different, they were already very good.
Very good, yeah.
I have to say. And honestly, I'm very happy to have an 01 or an 05 or an 06 Columella, because they were, believe me, they were already good wines.
No, indeed, indeed.
They were different, but
exactly.
I think they were already vibrant, and yeah, so probably more fleshy and a bit more concentrated, but there's already something special in these wines.
That is for sure. And as we've reached your second decade, now you're bringing in new changes for the next 10 years?
Yeah, it's a very good point that Jeremy is making, because when we tasted the first 2 decades, I said to Paul, shit, man, I almost like the tannins of the first decade more. It's a problem. So if we can make a perfect world, we must get the aromatics of the second decade onto the feet of the first decade.
Indeed.
Yeah. So what we're gonna do, because it changed now this year, you know, we change. I think we're gonna I would think in the middle of the fermentation, we will maybe do the délestage a little bit bigger. Just it's a little bit too feng shui at the moment. We must go a little bit more fucking boots and all. So I think we went from one to the other. We went to Zen. Okay, so we're gonna come back a little bit with extraction. I think we went from, we must find some of those tannins again that we had in the first decade.
Yeah, that's what I like when I talk with you is time suddenly becomes this essential thing, and we all realize that we're just a small dot, and these things are built over generations and generations, and what you're doing here is for either your grandson or someone else who comes and who picks all this work, and I think that's amazing. That's almost like history in the making that we see.
But that is why it's so fun. Well, it's so wonderful that, like what Alison said, that she meet Marcus and Remy spending all their. I mean, Remy could have been at his home with his child and his wife, but he chose to spend time with Marcus. You know, so Marcus is part of a plan on this plan. Because if Marcus is not in this plan, he has a brother who's also studying oenology, Xander. So we have 2 sons that will continue. But you know, I only have 3 decades, 4 decades. Then not even 3, because if they are 30, they are going to come back to the domain. Then they will kick me out.
They're going to kick you out.
They will kick me out. So I don't know how much time I have left, but you know how it is. When I don't know, we live in Africa. Sometimes the big old lion gets kicked out. Huh?
We shall
see. All you can do is lie under the tree and lick your wounds. Exactly. That's all you can do, and look at the young lions.
Yeah.
You know? So, but it's all part. It's a multi-generational thing to produce a Grand Vin. It's not one man or one thing.
Indeed. I hope you guys are enjoying this Columella 210 as much as I am. It's quite amazing. It's quite amazing.
Actually, we didn't have enough, so we moved to another wine. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I understand.
Next time we'll make it a bigger sample. All right, let's move to the whites. We'll start with Skurfberg. So Skurfberg is the ones that is the furthest, right, from your farm. That's the one that's 4 hours away in Clan William. So that's technically, actually, is it still the Swartland out there, or I think it's not anymore, right?
It's the Citrus Dal Mountains.
Yeah, it's the Citrus Dal
25
Mountain.
review.
And this is what you guys are seeing, and that's the background I had on my picture is the Skurfberg. And you and some other producers make amazing Chenin Blanc from this area. And obviously we all know, we've talked about the importance of Chenin in South Africa. So the funny thing is, you have all these amazing, wonderful Chenin sites next to you, and you had to go 4 hours away for this site. What was it that struck you the most there? Because it's quite a site. It's red soils. It's an amazing place. What was it that drew you there?
So I think obviously the fact that the vineyard is very old. I mean, this is a big drawing card.
Yeah.
But for me so Mrs. Kirsten, the other Chenin that I'm producing in Stellenbosch from the oldest vineyard in the country, Mrs. Kirsten is planted on decomposed granite with a quartzitic base. Okay, so it's a very different soil to Skurfberg. And it has also some alluvial aspects. This is in 100% pure iron oxide saturated sandstone formation. So this was a completely different expression of Chenin. It's very high altitude. So I'm on this thing now, so 2,200 feet, which is 700.
Yeah, it's about 700 meters, right? Skurfberg.
Yes.
Yeah. It's quite high.
And I have this, I work with this viticulturist called Jaco Engelbrecht of Visual Viticulture.
Yeah.
And
Jaco.
we've been, you know, when I was studying Grenache, because the grape I studied more than any grape on the planet is Grenache. And when we were studying Grenache, I was busy with like Rayas and I did L'Ermita and Priorato. I did Les Magnas and Priorato, Le Spectacle of René Barbier. I did the Vineyards Las Umbrias of Daniel Landi, Rambo al Norte of Daniel Landi. I took all these amazing, for me, reference Grenache vineyards of the world, and we built with an international portal that we negotiated with France and Spain. We built these solar radiation models of the site to see how the sun, because Grenache is very sensitive to sunlight, the specific lux radiation influx on the chlorophyll and the mitochondria on the leaf. It's a plant that's very specific to light. It's a little bit like Pinot Noir. I mean, it's completely different, but Pinot Noir is also very sensitive to light.
Correct.
And lux. And then when we built these models, I was reduplicating then the same models in South Africa across big areas to see where can we find the right places. And this place was a place that showed like one of the best places in the world to grow Grenache. And we have Grenache there. We have a vineyard there, which is called Soldat.
Soldat, yeah, is from there as well.
But what we then realized, because I will give you the statistics on Grenache. So Grenache needs more than 5,400 megawatt per hour per square February, which is our ripening season. But so Grenache wants a lot of sun. You know, Syrah wants, if Grenache wants 5,400, Syrah wants, if you look at Côte Rôtie, Syrah wants 3,400 to 3,800 maximum. Here's the difference. Grenache doesn't want heat. It doesn't like being warm. It likes a lot of energy from the sun, but it doesn't want heat. And the only way you get that is with altitude. That explains why the Grenaches around Madrid so good.
Yeah.
So when I was doing this study, I found the Skurfberg area, and in that time, we did the solar radiation thing on the Loire, and then this site is very close to what you can achieve in warm years in the Loire.
Yeah.
So this is the closest I can get to a Loire kind of type wine, but with a true African vibe.
Yeah, it's beautiful in the glass, huh?
And I will tell you, there's no other place in the country you can make a wine like this.
No, Skurfberg is quite unique. Yeah.
This is a unique wine in the world.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. In my glass, it's tasting beautifully.
It's always very a little bit salty, a little bit saline minerality. It has a lot of stone fruit, you know, like peaches, peach skin, yeah. Apple. This, when you find in Chenin the quality of stone fruit, you have reached a very high level. Then if you can get it, well, like here, it's 1.6 grams of sugar, very good pH, very good acidity. This wine will live for a very long time. You all have 2 little milliliters in your little bottles, okay? But if you had a whole bottle,
yeah, we will drink it.
No, you try what I say now. You open the bottle, drink the bottle over 30 days.
Okay.
1 month. It will not fall apart.
No. Doesn't look like.
You will go on a journey with a wine that you cannot believe. It will not get yellow. It will not go oxidative. I'm not into the Primox world. You will be fine. You will go on a beautiful journey.
Yeah, it's quite a wine, and it's and in the last year with the droughts, I think you produced almost, I mean, very little of this, right?
It's a big problem.
Yeah.
We only made 3,000 bottles last year. It's a big problem.
Yeah.
You see, the more and more people know about these wines, and we cannot make more.
Yeah.
It's a problem, huh?
Well, it's a beauty for those lucky enough to to taste it. And I don't know, someone is asking if we have Jeroboams of Skurfberg, but
the problem is if I make a Jeroboam, it means I don't have if I have a Jeroboam, I lose 7 or 8 bottles of wine. Yeah. At least I could keep 8 people. I should bottle the Skurfberg in the bottles that you received for this tasting.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. That could be.
Because I have a lot of people that's very angry with us because they want the wine, but they cannot get it.
Yeah, well.
It's a problem. It's a big problem.
It's also what makes wine beautiful.
Yeah, even with footpath, even worse.
Yeah, footpath is even worse in terms of production.
But Transandina is a good, well, not a big allocation, but Transandina is a good, and they are good, so they will get more. If we have more, they will get more. So
I know France is starting to discover the beauties of South Africa, and a big up to Valad and Transandine, your importer, and us retailers are very happy to represent you and sell those wines.
Yeah, and in Holland or in the Netherlands I have a also marvelous importer. You know, De Lange.
Yeah, very good guy.
Paul Frankeisen is a legend. He's an absolute. He's a bloody legend, man. So yeah, I work with lovely people. I must just find wine. That's what I must find.
Guys, we're very sorry with Mark, but we need to go because I got two teenagers and they're starving, so I'm going to get killed in a few minutes.
No, I'm conscious of the time.
But Eben, it was such a pleasure to see you, even if it's on screen. And I'll be back in the Swartland very soon.
Yeah, you are most welcome. I hope to come to, I must come to France. I mean,
please do, please do.
Yeah, I will wait. Everybody must now get sick and get finished with it, and then I will come.
I agree. I agree. Well, I had it a month ago, so we can move on now. I agree.
I will come, but I will come with a lot of wine. I can promise you. I'm not coming dry.
Me too. I told you I would come with a few Coche du Riz and Rouget. I remember that, so I will.
Yeah, no, I will come with a lot of wine too. We will not sleep.
Bye, Eben.
Okay, ciao.
So,
thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Very nice.
Thank you. Moving on to almost the last one, the Kokerboom. Another fascinating wine made of Semillon, but also a little bit of that famous Semillon Gris.
Yes.
Which has been basically, I would say, a kind of mutation of Semillon proper to South Africa. So this vineyard, where is it again? I think I forgot where exactly it is, but it's again around that same area, right? Or
it's about 15 kilometers east of the Skurfberg, so it's in the same appellation.
Yeah.
But this is 800 meters. It's much higher, or quite higher. This vineyard there is only 2 of these vineyards left in South Africa. Yep. There's one in Franshoek that's called La Colline.
Yep.
And it's this one. It's the only 2 that's left of the original early 1900 green grape plantings. It's a very historic vineyard. The wine is it's a co-plantation, a field blend. So 70% is more or less 70% is Semillon Blanc and 30% is Semillon Gris. And I did some work on Semillon because when you think of Semillon, you think of maybe two things. You are thinking Bordeaux Blanc in the Grape.
Yep.
And you can think of Hunter Valley Semillon in Australia. We are not in one of those styles. The Semillon in South Africa gets beautifully ripe and almost take on the characteristics of Chenin Blanc with more volume.
Correct.
Make it simple. But it has the waxy qualities, that wax, lanolin, white pepper, extremely textural. It has some green beans. It has some reserved flavors in terms of, it has a little bit of that green hue on it. So Semillon in South Africa has a big history. It was 80% of the national planting in the late 1800s. So it has a big history in South Africa. Unfortunately, everything was almost lost. So these wines are very rare, and we picked this one around 13.8, 13.9. We pick it very close to 14. Because if you do too early, you have these green vegetal characters, which is not good. But it is a tremendous bottling, and unfortunately, this is one of our smallest productions.
Yeah,
so it's also like the Skurfberg. It's quite small.
Yeah, it's quite a nice bottle. I'm always amazed when I first had as you mentioned, the La Colline in Franschhoek Semillon and this Semillon in Kokerboom, for a French educated palate, used to Bordeaux Semillon, this was quite something of a discovery, because it's not what I had associated mentally to Semillon.
Yeah, we have people here in South Africa that's trying to make Semillon like Sauvignon Blanc, but for me they are confused.
Yeah, they need to come back to the right path.
Well, okay, everyone into his own opinion, but
Yeah.
I don't understand. I'm struggling to understand
what is it that they're trying to achieve.
They are trying to achieve, because we already have Sauvignon Blanc.
Fantastic. And last but not least, and I think, by the way, that as you guys are tasting out there, you see the interest of having tasted the reds first and then the whites is what is done in if you go and taste in Burgundy sometimes at La Romanée-Conti, but it is very interesting to taste in that order. So last but not least, Palladius, the signature wine that represents, I would say, your interpretation of the Swartland. Here we have vintage 2013. And again, with Palladius, you mentioned that you started in 2002, 2 years after Columella, and you did the same thing. After a decade, you decided to stop and rethink your approach. What did you do in the first 10 years and what did you change for the second decade for Palladius?
So when I started with Palladius, at that time, the only blend in the country was kind of Sauvignon Blanc, Chenin Blanc. It was kind of a Vin Blanc kind of thing. So I, again, to come back to my story of living in the Mediterranean, so I started traveling, and Peter Sisek of Spain is a good friend of mine that's making the wines at the Dominio de Pingas. And Peter at that time was working at a cellar in Girona called Clos d'Argonne.
Yeah.
And so I went there to taste, and he had a white blend there that was like Grenache Blanc and Cerello and Panza Blanca and, you know, like all these white grapes. And it was for me very interesting. And then I went and I tasted with Gérard Gobi. I tasted some of his old vineyards, you know, which was like a little bit also like mixed. He had a lot of Grenache Blanc and Grenache Gris, but he had some vineyards with different things. And then I started traveling more through the south of France, tasting more and more wines, which were blends of like very many Mediterranean grapes. So I came back to South Africa and I started blending Chenin Blanc, Grenache Blanc, Roussanne, Viognier, and a little bit of Chardonnay at the time. The Chardonnay was obviously not the best choice, but okay, I started. And after 3 years, I realized the Chardonnay was a bad idea, so I stopped that. And I was fermenting at that stage in 500-liter pieces.
Yes, yeah.
And then I bought some demi-muille, which is the one with the thicker, to try and keep more reductivity. That worked, but not really so spectacular. Tried to build more freshness. Then I said, okay, I need to add, I added Claret Blanche, Colombar, a little bit of Colombar. I'm not talking high production Colombar for cognac or brandy. I'm talking old bush vine, Colombar, small bunches, beautiful. We added Verdelho, we added Semillon Blanc, Semillon Gris. And so with the addition of these other varieties that all ripen very early, and then Marsanne, Roussanne, Viognier that is late, and Chenin kind of in the middle, because Chenin Blanc is still 38% of the blend, more or less, 35 to 38. We managed over the years with the addition of these other grapes to make the wines fresher, just fresher. And then I started working in 2012 and 13. I started to work. I leave the wood, I leave the wood completely in 14. But I left a lot of the wood in 12 and 13 already to work with clay amphora and concrete eggs. Yep. So the 13 was one of the first wines to kind of leave the oak, have all the inclusion of all the claret and palomino and semillon blanc and semillon gris and verdelho, and so, you know, the fresher components. And like I say, now I've planted the Certico, Catarato, Grillo. You know, hopefully one day these wines can also, grapes can also bring more freshness into the wine. The question about Chardonnay, why it wasn't the best. Chardonnay in the Swartland is just too ripe and you lose all the acidity. Yeah. When you look at Swartland, Chardonnay in the Swartland, we know one thing for sure. The Swartland is not Burgundy. This is the only thing that is a fact.
Yeah. You didn't need to plant Chardonnay to know that. I mean, it's very different.
Yeah. But I picked from my neighbor. It was very easy. I just didn't pick anymore.
Yeah. That was the lazy option.
Oh.
Well, so I think, first of all, thank you for all the wines. They're just magnificent, and I think it shows, hopefully, that those bottles and those cuvées are really worth the wait. It's not easy. It's tempting. We always joke about these are the kind of wines that you just want to buy, leave in the box, put in the cellar, and then completely forget about them, and then, come back to them like 8-10 years later, open the box and start enjoying them. So it's the patience pays, and it's amazing that you've built these wines to age. And a little bit about the future. This picture, as you mentioned a lot of times, you're planting new things, and the Columella and the Palladius for the future might be a complete different blend. I'm just showing a quick video here of the work you do with these new vines, with the wooden poles to help them grow, and this little gray thing that you've been using to help them with moisture and growing. So this video, if people want to know more, just go on YouTube. This video is there. It's quite an amazing one, but I find it fascinating, all the hard work you put into growing these new vines.
Yeah. No, you only have one chance to plant a vineyard.
Yeah.
And you must do it right. You can't even have a dialogue with yourself. Everything is like, every day is like, what can I do more to make it more? And just because you want the best possible result. I think I love old vines, but you must plant young vines to become old vines. And it requires doing all the things right. You can see behind me all the cover crops. That is Chinese radishes mixed with canola flowers, mixed with lupins, mixed with mustard seeds. We try and grow a lot of carbon in the soil, capture. The beautiful thing with plants is they can take the carbon that we put in the air where we make pollution. The plants can take the carbon out of the air and return it to the soil. Because what we are doing is we're pumping oil out of the soil, then we are burning the oil, and that puts the carbon in the atmosphere. And the only thing that can take the carbon out of the atmosphere and put it back in the soil where it was before the oil was pulled from the soil, the only one that can do it is the plant through the cycle of carbon sequestration.
Yep.
And therefore the plants, they're very, very important to us. And yeah, I think, you know, we owe our entire life to the fact that green plants on this planet gives us oxygen so that we can breathe and we can do all the beautiful things we love on the planet. Yeah, so
Indeed.
yeah,
Indeed.
I love what I do. And I want to thank you very much for the opportunity. I know it's 2 hours, but if you know me well, if you come to the domain, a tasting here is also very many hours. I do nothing very fast.
No,
Nothing.
no,
I'm not very fast.
yeah. And we know that your eye is going to pop up at 4:45, so we're all feeling a bit bad for keeping you up. It's 1 hour later in South Africa with the time.
I did a tasting last night in Cape Town where I showed people the new Japan, all the great wines now of Japan. Have you tasted the great wines of Japan? It is mind-boggling what's going on in Japan.
I remember tasting a Cabernet Franc with Chris Muligner and Blind, and it was just amazing.
So there are a lot of people. It's not only Swartland. The world is a fascinating place right now.
I see that Vincent is connected. So if you're hearing us, Vincent, hope you're doing well out there. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, we can maybe squeeze 1 or 2 questions. Feel free before we all move on. And I'm not gonna. If I ever see 4:45 on my clock again, I'm gonna think of you, Eben.
Well, thank you. Now I see there's a question about pinotage. Pinotage, I think I think we missed a big opportunity with the grape because generally the world is very aggressive on any type of crossing. You know, if it is Marcelin or Müller-Thurgau or whatever. But I think I made pinotage 25 or 28, 26 years ago. I worked with pinotage and I made what I think at the time was very good pinotages. And obviously people know the pinotage from Kanonkop. That pinotage is more in a kind of almost a Bordeaux style, like a claret style. Kind of pinotage with a Cabernet brain. Then you have Hamilton Russell. They make the Ashbourne pinotage, which is kind of, it used to, we made one which was pinotage with a Pinot Noir brain. What we need is people to make pinotage with pinotage brains. And we made one this past season, which is exceptional. Exceptional. Yeah. I was drinking it.
It's the one planted in Hemelenarde, right? Or?
No, it's the one. No, it's when I bought the 20 hectare next door, one of the things is there is 6 hectares of pinotage.
Oh, there you go.
But I'm selling the grapes. But yeah, but it's young vineyards, and I cannot make a young vines pinotage now. It's not working in the domain. No. But we made an amazing wine. I'm looking at the wine every day and I'm thinking like, geez, I should be making pinotage. But so I think it's a good grape. I think the media is wrong. I think the producers are wrong. And I think the people are growing it wrong. There's nothing wrong with the grape. The problem with the grape is the people. The grape is not the problem. The people is the problem.
Yeah. It's often the case with nature. We're the problem. Yeah. Someone is asking, what are in this 20 hectares next door? What are the things apart from this pinotage? Anything interesting or?
So there in the 20 hectares that we bought, there is what I said in the beginning. there is one, two, there is 5 parcels, and the one parcel is a parcel I've been trying to buy for 15 years. For 15 years, every year I've been asking my neighbor, please sell me this vineyard. And for 15 years he said no. But this year he said yes. So, the reason I never made a Chenin Blanc from Swartland is I said, if I cannot make a Chenin from this vineyard, I'm not going to make a Swartland Chenin. So next year, we will make our first Swartland monopole Chenin.
Good. Looking forward to it.
Yes. And the monopole is called the Rotsbank, which means rock shelf.
Okay.
Because it's planted on a shelf of rocks. Then there's the one parcel that I said will go to Vincent, Karim and them. And then there's one part of the one parcel I'm going to put in Palladius.
Okay.
Because it's as good as our top vineyard of Chenin. And then there's the Pinotage. But we're pulling out the Pinotage, a big part of it. I'm going to keep 3 hectares for friends, and the rest I will replant.
Okay.
Yeah.
One question is, there's a long list of new grape varieties that you're planting. I know it's a bit early, but what would you say are the promising ones so far? It's in terms of whites and reds.
So very promising is the Greek grape Agriugitico.
Mm-hmm.
It's a commercial disaster because nobody can say Agriugitico.
No, it's impossible.
It's a commercial disaster.
Yeah.
But it's okay.
It could be an Afrikaans word, you know.
Yeah.
Same.
So Agriugitico is very good. Assertico is very good. Like Assertico is crazy good, yeah.
Yeah.
Grillo is very good. The Sicilian grape.
Yeah.
Trincadera is very good. The Tinta Amarella, very, very good. Then
That's it. Gives us an idea.
Kind of that vibe. We have very good results with Fermentino, but only in the cooler sites. But in the cooler sites, on granite, Fermentino is amazing.
Yeah.
I don't want warm.
No, it doesn't like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we will see. We planted the grapes in granite, in limestone, and a little bit of sandstone. So we will see. We will start making the comparisons from next year.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll all meet again in a few years to taste the first bottlings of those.
Yeah.
If you allow us to drink them young.
No, we will. Now we will. We can taste.
Indeed.
You can come taste now. They are in the cellars. But yeah, it's a lot of work from the sections. But yeah, I'm very, very happy for all the
all the hard
the work that's finally coming to part.
Yeah. Well, Eben, thanks very, very, very much for your time. I know you're a hard worker. We all know now that you get up early and work all day. I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, and everyone, I think, had a fantastic 2 hours. I knew this was not going to take just 90 minutes with you and we could go on for hours and hours. But I think the best thing is to promise to all of us here to next time we do this in person, and we can discuss all nights under a starry sky somewhere.
Yeah, I would love it. I would love it. You know, I can't even remember when last I was in Paris. I must Google to find Paris now.
Yeah,
you know, that's how long time I was there. So yeah, I must come back.
You need to know how to bicycle. That's all. But if you can do that, you're fine.
I can bicycle all day long. But I would love to see. I said to Jean-Luc Subi that we are talking already now 2 years, so it's
going to happen. It's
yeah,
going to happen.
It's getting ridiculous. I cannot talk about it anymore.
Yeah. Remy and myself have big plans. Swartland Revolution in Paris.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's
we will
going to happen.
We will come in a revolt in Paris.
We'll end up being arrested.
That's also sure. Good. All I know is the food in prison in France is better than in South Africa.
Oh, that's for sure. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have a good evening, all of you. Thanks for having followed us. Now it's going to be the holiday season. Actually, tonight is, I know there's maybe Allison and you're the only American, so it's Thanksgiving. I think that's a better tradition than freaking Black Friday. So
I agree.
Yeah, so enjoy your Thanksgiving, enjoy the symbolic moment, and we will all meet hopefully soon. Have a good evening, and next tasting will be hopefully in January before harvest, because then the producers are going to get busy in South Africa. It should be with Chris and Andrea Millenier to talk about their Leo Passant adventures. So you will receive information on that. Looking forward to seeing you on the other side of Christmas. Eben, again, big up to you for all the hard work and the quality of everything you've said. We're gonna dream of many things tonight until 4:45. Thank you. Lekker.
Okay.
See you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.